Aloha, this is Frank, the pastor of YPOGBC in Hawaii and speaker for Reasons for Hope. And we'd like to thank you for joining us today as we continue on with our devotionals through the book of Revelation. Our text that we're going to focus on is in Revelation 5:1-3, where it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll, written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?' And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it." Throughout the history of the world, there have been many who have sought to conquer and rule the earth as they have the desire to be the so-called king of the earth. Why do these people thrive for world dominance? Well, simply because their father, the devil, wants the same. After his rebellion against God was crushed, the devil and his angelic followers, they were thrown out of heaven. In fact, Jesus tells us this in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, where he said to them, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Then this is expounded on in Revelation chapter 12, verses 3-6, where it says, "And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of the heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but just to explain it briefly, the red dragon, that's Satan. The 1/3 of the stars that he drew were angels who became demons. The woman he was standing before is actually the nation of Israel, and her child is none other than Jesus, the Son of God himself. So the devil became the God of this age. 2 Corinthians 4 verses 3-4 tells us, "But even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose mind the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine upon them." But Satan also inspired a host of other humans to try their hand at conquest. We see men such as Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, Alexander the Great, the emperors of Rome. And then we get into modern times such as Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Napoleon. We also see people like Lenin and Stalin and Hitler. And we can even say with people today like the Islamic State, they have tried to take over and have world dominance. And yet, in the future, the most powerful Satan-possessed human conqueror of all time will show up on the scene. This will be the final Antichrist. However, all of these men and a host of lesser men have one thing in common. They have failed. Because even though the clouds may be dark, the sun is always shining. In fact, in Nahum chapter 1, verses 1-10, we are told, "The burden against Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite, God is jealous, and the Lord avenges. The Lord avenges and is furious. And the Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserves wrath for his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and makes it dry, and dries up all the rivers. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the flower of Lebanon wilts. The mountains quake before him. The hills melt, and the earth heaves at his presence. Yes, the world and all who dwell in it. Who can stand before his indignation? And who can endure the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knows those who trust in him. But with an overflowing flood, he will make an utter end of its place, and the darkness will pursue his enemies. What do you conspire against the Lord? He will make an utter end of it. Affliction will not rise up a second time, for while tangled like thorns, and while drunken like drunkards, they shall be devoured like stubble fully dried." There is only one individual who has the right, the power, and the authority to rule the earth, and that person is the Lord Jesus Christ. No one else is worthy or capable of ruling the world. No evil man, no good man, no demon, no holy angel. Absolutely no one else. And this revelation is the revelation of Revelation chapter 5. And it is awesome. Let's remember where we are. Right in front of the throne room of God in heaven. Present are the cherubim and the 24 elders who are singing a series of hymns of praise to God. These hymns celebrate God as the creator and redeemer, and the fact that he is about to take back what is rightfully his. This is the moment that all Christians and the entire creation are longing for. Romans 8:18 through 19 says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God." I also want us to look at one verse in chapter 5 in particular, Revelation 5:1. "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. It is clear that John wants us to know that he was an eyewitness. So, what did he see? In his vision, John saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll, written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. The word scroll in the Greek is biblion, which means a rolled up or written volume, kind of like a scroll or a book. This word usually describes a long piece of papyrus or animal skin rolled from both ends into the middle. But this was no ordinary scroll. While Roman wills were sealed up with 7 seals, this scroll was not a will, but rather it was a deed or a document. The point of this is that there is a contract of who the rightful heir is. Some scholars state that this scroll or others like it are spoken by Ezekiel in Ezekiel chapter 2, 9 through 10, and in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 through 9, and they make it clear that it was a scroll of glory and of judgment. In the ancient world, official transcripts were ratified with 2 documents, one that was sealed and kept in a safe place, and one that was kept available. God looked upon Daniel's book as the deed that guaranteed that he would faithfully keep his promises to the people of Israel. To close up the book and seal it didn't mean to hide it away, because God's message was given to his people and they would ultimately know the future. The book was to be treasured and protected and shared with the Jewish people. However, the book was sealed in this sense. The full meaning of what Daniel wrote would not be understood until the time of the end. But when the Apostle John completed the book of Revelation, he was told to keep this book unsealed. Why? Because the time of the end was at hand. The scroll John saw in God's hand is the deed to the earth, and there is only one who is the rightful heir to this deed. And we will catch up and watch this take place during our next devotional. Once again, this is Frank from Reasons for Hope, and I thank you for joining us today. Adios.